Okay, welcome back to the Brandrocket Digital Marketing Podcast. My name's Jake. I'm the founder and president of a company called Brandrocket. We do digital marketing with companies all across Canada. And today we got an extra special guest. We got Charlene Ward, esteemed mortgage broker, with us today. And really just, again, the podcast is to talk about business owners, the journey of having your own business and stuff like that. So Charlene, thank you for being here with us. And tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a mortgage agent. I've been doing this for about 6 years, but been in the mortgage world for about 10. And I do coaching as well. So I'm a transformation coach.
Nice.
I help people kind of get back on track, get their self-confidence in check, and just lead their own lives without relying on other people's approval. And
nice.
That's the gist of what I do. Yeah, so I actually used to be a counselor for abused women.
Okay.
Back right when I was in college, I took a course for that and I went into it. It was a little heavy.
Okay.
So my first real job that I got after that was to work at a mortgage lending company.
Okay.
And so I started doing that and then I loved it, but I thought I want to be able to manage my time more.
Okay.
Instead of having the cubicle life. Though we respect the people that do that. Yeah. It just wasn't for me. And so I wanted to have my days look different every day and be out and meeting people in person.
Yeah.
So I decided to become self-employed and do it on the other side.
Nice. And I guess you've been more time spent being self-employed than you had been a 9-to-5er, right?
I didn't think of that till now. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So just in that set of like mindset and mind frame of what that is and how that looks like, what would you say is the best part about that compared to maybe what your life looked like before that, being a business owner and stuff?
Yeah, I think honestly, anyone who is in the business of having their own business or being a small business owner is going to tell you that their own personal growth is one of the biggest things for sure.
Okay. Like personal growth, what does that look like for you going through this journey? Like what is that for Charlene Ward?
Yeah. So for me, it's really learning how to build relationships with people, which is why I've sort of also transitioned onto the transformative coaching as well, where I've been doing that. Because a lot of business is relationships and not just surface level, but actually knowing people on a deeper level.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
Yeah.
And obviously with relationships, there's so many different ways to build those, right? What do you find are maybe some of the most successful ways that you've been able to build relationships with people that may not necessarily be interested in whether it was like going through a mortgage broker or a coach, like something you're offering, but still just developing a basic relationship with them and then being able to offer maybe something that they really do need and work your way in that way? How does that look like?
Yeah. So I know that when you're in business, a lot of people think, well, how can I get a sale out of this? And for me, I look at it beyond that. So
That's
how
awesome.
can I learn something from this person, whether it's what they do in their day-to-day in their morning?
Yeah.
I even do that with like my Uber drivers.
Okay.
And like I've gotten like leads from that. Like you just should be talking to everybody and learning as much as you can.
Yeah.
Whether you get a sale or not, you get some sort of tidbit where you can better yourself.
Nice.
And sometimes sales come out of that most of the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't. But when you have that foundation, people are more likely to trust you and want to come to you when they need something.
Exactly. Okay, cool. So for you, Charlene, what's maybe going on in the world of mortgages that we can maybe dive into?
Yeah, well, as like mortgages was a little bit slow for the last year or so.
Yeah.
With rates being so high, now they're coming down. And so everybody's sort of jumping into the market and we've seen even lineups at open houses, which is crazy.
Nice.
Haven't seen that since like probably the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so it's really picked up. So there's a lot more people jumping in now.
Cool. Now, is there anything that's driving that as a motivating factor with buyers or sellers or new laws or anything like that?
Yeah, honestly, I think the main thing really is just, I believe it's interest rates.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of people are jumping in now, which is why when interest rates were high, a lot of my colleagues and myself were all saying you should be getting into the market now because there's not going to be as much of a bidding war as opposed to, even though rates are higher, you can negotiate rate later.
Okay.
You can't negotiate price later. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
So that's more so what we were saying. And so now what we've said has happened is going to happen. So price is going up because there's more bidding and rates are coming down.
Okay. Okay. And are we seeing that there are a lot of people maybe moving back to GTA locations, or still was there that trend of people moving on the outwards and outskirts of like the major cities?
I wouldn't say that there's like a huge trend of people moving into the GTA where it's noticeable right now. I'm sure there are people coming back.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it is more so outside of the GTA.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's more suburbs. It's people wanting to start their families and have homes outside of the city.
Yeah.
As opposed to staying in a condo where they're nearly married or.
For sure. Okay. And that's really cool to know because there's always so much going on with mortgage brokers and real estate and the government of Canada doing new things with rates. Are they raising rates? Are they not? Like, and it's always a common topic that people are talking about. But at the end of the day, I think it's sort of like you said, where you guys as the brokers know best, and you're either encouraging people to buy at certain times or because of a bunch of different things that could be happening in the market, it's good to do things on advisement, I would say. So using somebody like a mortgage broker, I know for me, as a small business owner, we have to use mortgage brokers to get a mortgage, especially if you're a newer business, right? Trying to get a mortgage. For me, I tried to get a mortgage. I go to a big bank and they just sort of laugh me out of the room, right? They're like, dude, you don't make enough money. I'm like, well, I just started a business. I did make a good amount of money, but now the fact that I have my own business and I have to show that revenue and I have to show those contracts and I have to show all of these things that I had no idea about. For me as a business owner, I was like, what do I do, right? Do I just stay renting because I could afford it, or do I look at these options to go with, right? So for you as a broker working with, probably, do you work with a lot of business owners?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are some of the most like common challenges you see like with business owners like myself? Would they be like, just, we don't know really what the rules are? Or is it, what do you see on your side?
Yeah, absolutely. Like they don't know what the rules are. And it's interesting because they might have another business owner friend that they can talk to, but everybody runs their business so differently.
Yeah.
And so the way that they receive their income or how often or what type of business or the nature of it is different from their friend.
Yeah.
And so that's why banks won't look at it, because it's such a case by case.
Yeah.
Like it really is common sense, but you have to make sense of it, right? And a lot of banks, they have so many restrictions that unless you're like full-time salaried.
Yeah.
But a lot of business comes from business owners.
Yeah.
So that's something that should be reconsidered, but I'm not complaining because you get the business.
Of course,
yeah.
right? And you'd probably know this better than somebody like me who just like goes to Google and looks up how does a business owner get a mortgage? And of course you come through like a ton of articles, right? Everything says something different. Is there something that you know of specifically that would be like helpful resources or something like that for business owners to potentially look at when they're looking to maybe refinance or their next home or their first home?
I would say, and you might not like my answer, but I would say talk to a mortgage broker, because Googling how to get a mortgage as a business owner is like Googling to find out what your symptoms mean when you're sick.
Yeah.
Like it's really not going to be helpful to you.
Yeah.
And there's so many different evolving programs that like today you might have one option and then maybe in 6 months you might have 3.
Okay.
So it's just best to speak with a mortgage broker, so you can always call myself if that's like an issue that anyone's having.
Nice. And and I think that's really important, right? Because when I was first looking for a mortgage for my property, I really didn't even know what a mortgage broker did, to be honest, right? And I think that's half the battle. In my mind, it was always just like a mortgage broker is just someone who will talk to banks and third-party banks and figure out who can give you what kind of money, right? When really, I think when you learn about the industry and find somebody maybe like yourself who's able to educate the buyers and the business owners on what's happening, what's changing, why you need to do certain things, why you need to show certain things. And going back to something we were talking about before, having that trust factor and building a relationship with somebody, I think that goes beyond just Googling mortgage brokers and finding somebody and Bob's your uncle, right?
Absolutely.
So I know with you especially, one of the big points of contention is that you do a lot of like social branding, right? And you do a lot of like coffee talks and you do a lot of like tips and tricks and stuff about that. Do you want to talk about how that is something that's been maybe a big part of your business and growing your portfolio?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, honestly, for me, one thing I also want to mention and add to what you were saying earlier is a lot of people think that when you use a mortgage broker, you have to pay them, because I guess back in like maybe the 70s, that was like a thing. Yeah. So people always assume that. But honestly, working with a mortgage broker not only allows you to get more options, but also you're going to have a mortgage, I hope not lifelong, but for a long time. Yeah. And so having that mortgage broker there to help you throughout that process, it's good, as opposed to someone at the bank who might be at RBC today, and then tomorrow they're at CBC and you don't, or CIBC, and you don't know what, like, that they left. Yeah. It's just kind of a mess, right?
Yeah.
But coming back down to that trust factor, I think that's where branding comes in.
Okay.
You, of course, would know a lot about that. You have your own company in regards to that.
Yeah.
But branding allows you to show your personality, right?
Yeah.
And so people are going to either reject that or accept that depending on what their values are and vice versa.
Yeah.
And that's how they decide if they want to work with you, is if they like your personality, your values, the value that you bring to them in terms of mortgages and what you can provide. And so that's where the coffee talks come in.
That's cool.
But I don't like to make it where it's like, here's a report every month and it's kind of like a little straight line.
Yeah.
I like to make it fun. Sometimes I dance.
Yeah.
That's how people learn best, I think. So.
No, that's really cool. And would you say it was something that you started doing right away when you first became a business owner, somebody who was responsible for their own branding, right? Was it something you did right away, or was it something like maybe you built up to as time went on because you thought it was more important? Like, what did that roadmap sort of look like for you?
So there's a bit of a vulnerable story with the coffee talks, which
cool.
I'll share. I won't get too deep into
That's
it,
fine.
but I started coffee talks initially because when I first joined and started doing mortgages, I was like in my early 20s.
Okay.
Everyone else was like in their 50s and 60s, and I was like the new one.
Yeah.
And I felt really inferior. I also had really bad social anxiety. So like pair that with being a young business owner, not the best.
Okay.
So I had met somebody who had a really great online presence, and I was like, I want to be like that. So that's when I started doing coffee talks to get over my social anxiety.
Okay.
And so I started doing that online, and then eventually I extended that out to in person. I started talking to people out in person.
Nice.
And kind of getting out of my comfort zone.
Cool.
And now I guess I dance on Instagram, so it's reached a whole other level. But that's why I started coffee talks.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a cool story, right? Like, and we were talking about this earlier, but like when we go back to the idea that the information that we're sometimes putting out as business owners, it's not to necessarily just be reeling people in. It's to educate them. It's to help them understand all these different things that are happening in your industry that you're the expert in, right? And I like what you said, where these people are either going to like you or they're not going to like you. And if they do, great. And if they don't, then it doesn't matter, right? Because the whole goal of what we're doing as business owners is to help as many people as we can with our solutions that we bring to the table, that we've been able to help others in similar situations. And some people, like we said, are either really going to appreciate that, or other people will just say, nah, it's not for me, which is totally fine as well. Because in my experience, especially as a business owner, one of the things that we learn is adversity and being able to adversify in all different kinds of sniarios. And a tidbit of advice I would give to a new business owner or somebody like that, if they were just starting out, but they knew they had something really great and all they kept hearing was no, was that the more no's you actually get, the more excited you should actually be. Because if all you're hearing is yes all day, well, number one, you got one hell of a product. But as a business owner, unfortunately, it's not that easy. So it's not going to come that easy to you no matter what. And the more no's you're hearing, eventually you're going to hear that first yes. Then you're going to hear that second yes. And then you're going to hear the third and fourth and all the way to your 100,000 million clients that you're going to end up helping along the way, right? So for me, the biggest thing that I've learned in conjunction with that is really just, don't be straight away by the no's, right? I think the yeses are few and far and in between sometimes, but as you learn and grow as business owners, as we do, it's really important to just expect those no's and let them fuel you instead of letting them drag you down, right? So for you, Charlene, what would you say to like a brand new mortgage broker or maybe even somebody starting in coaching, that's something that you've learned that if you could go back and give that piece of advice to somebody right now, what would that look like?
Yeah. So my advice would be, because I know you said that you might get a lot of no's.
Yeah.
I think this is my coaching brain.
Okay.
That's responding here is where the reason people take that so hard is because they personalize it.
Okay.
So like everything that happens to you, create a story about it. So you take that personally.
Yeah.
But like I said earlier, sometimes people might like you and they might not like you, or they might like your idea or not like it.
Yeah.
And sometimes even if they don't like your idea, then they might like it 6 months later.
Yeah.
Right? So never personalize anything. Practice detachment. I think that's the most important thing I've ever learned.
Yeah.
Be detached from the outcome.
Yeah.
That allows you to have confidence. Are you taking notes?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love this. Yeah, be detached from the outcome and really like focus on having a routine.
Okay.
And I think we talked about this on the phone before, which was make sure that you're making good choices, as in not just doing something that's morally right or immorally right, but more so what you're allowing, right? So they talk about like law of attraction.
Okay.
And I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and they're like, well, law of attraction, it's like, it's what you attract. It's not what you attract, it's what you entertain, right?
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Like if I have a client, if I have a lead or a realtor who's sending me clients who are not interested in buying, this is my mortgage brain, they're not interested in buying.
Yeah.
And we are both having to convince them to do that. I'm not going to like spend an hour or 2 hours a week talking to them and convincing them.
Yeah.
I'm going to let them know I'm there if they need help, but I'm going to focus on the people who want to buy.
Of course.
So that's me making a choice in what I'm investing my time in. Right?
As you should. Right? Like, okay.
So it's about what you say yes to. Like if something's happening to you, it's because you're entertaining that. So yeah, those are the two things. And also have like a morning routine.
Okay.
I'd say is really important.
Yeah.
So you can't just like roll out of bed and start work. You have to have a routine, whether it's working out or something. Yeah.
And I think, you know, when I first started my business too, I was literally just doing that. I was waking up and I was just like going to my computer and sitting there for 8 hours being like, okay, what am I doing today? Like, how many things do I need to do? And I would look up in my little condo at the clock and I would be like, I've been sitting down for 9 hours. I'd look at my step counter and be like 1,200 steps, like went to the bathroom a couple times. Like, and I'd be like, dude, like this is not good. Right. And going back to like what you said, like building routine, I could not agree more with that. I've been running Brandrocket now close to 5 years. And over the last 3 years, I think implementing that daily routine where, you know, whatever it is for anybody, it doesn't have to necessarily be like waking up, working out, making your bed, but having some sort of structure where you are sort of constantly doing the same things, maybe in a little bit of a different way, but, you know, wake up at a certain time. You do the same sort of routine where you wash your face, brush your teeth, you know, if you want to go for a run, you go for a run. You want to go to the gym, go to the gym, but keep that consistent because I feel like in my own business, relating back to what you're saying, it's made a significant difference, not only for my business being able to like have a little bit more structure, because I also feel like if I do these things in the morning, like go to the gym or like have my protein shake or any of that stuff, I'm like, well, I already did one thing on the list today that I was supposed to do. And all it was moving pretty well. Didn't mean I had to close a sale. Didn't mean I had to run a new campaign. Didn't mean I had to come up with a new crazy idea. It just meant I had to do the baby steps in order to get to the next big step. Right? So I really like how that's part of like your advice that you would really give somebody. And I don't think new business owners hear it enough, right? We sometimes everybody thinks of starting a business, which is great, and wanting to do it with that enthusiasm and stuff like that. But as time goes on, and we know this from the stats, it's like 80% of businesses will die within the first 5 years, right? And by implementing these little things, I think, Charlene, like routine, having the right mindset, all of these things can help people get beyond that 5-year mark.
Absolutely.
Which is really cool. So you talked about how a lot of that was sort of both your coaching mind and your mortgage mind, right? How do you sort of split those two things up now that you're evolving and doing more than just being a broker? Like, how have you found that transition?
I actually don't split them up, and I find that it helps me more. Like, I spend a lot of time, like I said, like doing those morning routines and doing things for myself, so I fill my own bucket. So no matter what, like I'm kind of always prepped for the day.
Okay.
And so I find that like the coaching aspect, and I started coaching because I had actually spent like 3 or 4 years really working on myself, learning a lot about myself, attachment styles, everything, right?
Yeah.
And so all these things I learned about myself and improved in within myself, I have them all like in a journal that I wrote in every day. Nice. And so now I incorporate it to help other people. Okay. But those people pay me, right?
Yeah.
But like I also like but I also like to, the camera's right there. They pay me.
Yeah.
But I also like to incorporate that with my friends or like new people I meet. I love like learning and connecting with people.
Yeah.
Like I just asked you what your death row meal was. I ask everybody that.
Yeah.
I just love to know. It says a lot about somebody.
Sure.
So I think the connecting aspect, has just increased with the coaching.
Okay.
Because I've just grown more comfortable doing it in business.
Nice.
How you do, like, business is like anything in life, right?
Yeah.
So you just have to treat people like they're human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's good to have somebody like that not a lot of people have, maybe like good friends that they can rely on or people that they can lean on in some of these times where people do go through difficult things, right? And I think that's maybe a big thing for somebody looking for, is it like defined as like a life coach, or is it defined as, how is your service defined as a coach?
Yeah, I would say it's similar to life coaching, honestly, without
Okay.
confusing anyone.
Yeah.
People don't know too much about coaching, but it's something that's sort of coming up right now.
Yeah.
But it's similar to a life coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like self-development kind of person, coach, I guess. That's a big word right now.
Yeah.
Right?
It's kind of like therapy a little bit, but therapy focuses a lot on like going back to your past.
Sure.
And coaching is more like, well, where are we going to go now?
That's cool.
So in terms of going forward.
Nice. So yeah, I think that's awesome. I think there's a lot of people that could benefit from that kind of service in general. Me, myself, definitely when I was younger, could have used some sort of coaching and be like, get your head on straight. But I think I wound up where I was going to wind up anyways. So maybe I did something right. But from your standpoint, do you find there's a little bit of difference in like the marketing approaches you take at all for the coaching compared to the way you're doing the broker stuff? Or do you find it's almost 2-in-1, like you were saying?
I find it's a little bit different.
Okay.
I feel like I'm much more online in
Okay.
regards to, like on Instagram, in regards to the mortgage stuff.
Okay.
I'm starting to incorporate more, or thinking about incorporating more of the coaching aspect as well
Okay.
onto my mortgage and having that balance with the two.
Okay.
But I definitely say there's a bit of a difference there just because the coaching is still fairly new.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like, how would you introduce yourself to a group of people that may actually need that service? Like, what would you do? Would it be like more networking events? If it's not like online social media, would it be like advertising that you do that? Like, how do you sort of envision as a business owner just getting the word out on something like that?
A lot of networking.
Okay.
So some of the people that I have that I'm coaching
Okay.
are not even like in Canada. Like there's some that are like in Denmark or wherever else in the
cool.
US. So they're kind of all around the world. But it's more so networking. So there's like a couple different circles that I use. And then I also kind of like network on Facebook as well and use that as a way to get clients. So
Sure.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And I know just from my experience, seeing a lot of these guys out there sort of doing coaching and stuff like that, do you see yourself doing like a lot of like free content for these networking kind of things? Because I do know a lot of people are attracted to maybe what is something that she's doing that may benefit me and sort of work that way into a funnel that could ultimately turn that person into a long-term subscriber of a blog, maybe that you're writing, that they're like, you know what, I really like what Charlene puts out. I like the post that she does every week on her blog about this certain topic. And just have something like a newsletter or something like that. Have you ever thought about any of those things that could possibly funnel in new people?
Yeah. So it's funny you say that. I'm very visual. I feel like people pay attention when it's visual.
Yeah.
And so I actually have a YouTube channel that posts content on.
Cool.
I wouldn't say it's like direct coaching content, but it's more like in terms of the biology and like what happens to your body when you're feeling stress and cortisol levels and dopamine, how to release those things. Like it's more on that aspect. It's not directly how I coach my clients, but it's still incorporated in that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, because I guess people could see like your personality, who you are, what you do, kind of thing, right? And I think that in itself is probably the biggest thing when looking to trust somebody that you want to talk to that can help you get to that next level, right? So from a business standpoint as well, I think it's just really cool, all of these different avenues that you've taken as a business owner since deciding I no longer want to do the 9 to 5. I want to be a business owner.